by Scott Westerfeld, Chapter 3, Section 3. Okay, I obviously knew how it happened, and the exact date, and pretty close to the exact time. You don't forget losing your virginity, after all. But I didn't actually know who it was. I mean, I got her name and everything, Morgan. Well, her first name, anyway. The big problem was I didn't remember where. Not a clue. Well, one clue. Bahama Llama Ding Dong. It was only 2 days after I first got to New York, fresh off the plane from Texas, ready to start my first year at college. I already wanted to study biology, even though I'd heard that it was a tough major. Little did I know. At that point, I could hardly find my way around the city. I got the general concept of uptown and downtown, although they didn't really match north and south. I knew from my compass. Don't laugh, they're useful. I'm pretty sure that this all happened somewhere downtown because the buildings weren't quite so tall and the streets were pretty busy that night. I remember lights rippling on water at some point, so I might have been close to the Hudson or maybe the East River. And I remember the Bahama Llama Ding Dong. Several, in fact. There's some kind of drink. My sense of smell wasn't superhuman back then, but I'm pretty sure they do have rum in them. Well, whatever they had, there was a lot of it. And something sweet, too. Maybe pineapple juice, which would make the Bahama Llama Ding Dong a close cousin of the Bahama Mama. Now, the Bahama Mama can be found on Google or in cocktail books. It's rum, pineapple juice, and a liqueur called Nassau Royale. And it is from the Bahamas, but the Bahama Llama Ding Dong has much more shadowy origins. After I found out what I'd been infected with and realized who must have done it, I searched every bar I could find in the village. But I never met a single bartender who knew how to make one, or who'd ever heard of them. Like a certain Morgan. Whatever. The Bahama Llama Ding Dong had come out of the darkness, seduced me, and then disappeared. These searches didn't evoke a single memory flashback. No hazy images of pinball machines jumped out at me. No sudden glimpses of Morgan's long, dark hair and pale skin. And no, being a carrier doesn't make you pale-skinned or gothy looking. Get real. Morgan was probably just some goth type who didn't know she was about to turn into a bloodthirsty maniac. Unless, of course, she was someone like me, a carrier. But who got off on changing lovers into Peeps? Either way, I hadn't seen her since. So this is all I can remember. There I was, sitting in a bar in New York City and thinking, wow, I'm sitting in a bar in New York City. This thought probably runs through the heads of a lot of newly arrived freshmen who managed to get served. I was drinking a Bahama Llama Ding Dong because the bar I was sitting in was, quote, the home of the Bahama Llama Ding Dong. It said so on a sign outside. A pale-skinned woman with long dark hair sat beside me and said, "What the hell is that thing?" Maybe it was the frozen banana bobbing in my drink that provoked the question. I suddenly felt a bit silly. Well, it's this drink that lives here. Says so on that sign out front. Is it good? It was good, but I only shrugged. Yeah, kind of sweet though. Kind of girly looking, don't you think? I did think. The drink had been a vague sort of embarrassment to me since it had arrived. Frozen banana bobbing to the music. But the other guys in the bar had seemed not to notice, and they were all pretty tough looking, what with their leather chaps and all. I pushed the banana down into the drink, but it popped back up. It wasn't really trying to be obnoxious, but frozen bananas have a lower specific density than rum and pineapple juice, it turns out. I don't know about girly, I said. Looks like a boy to me. She smiled at my accent. You're not from around here, are you? Nope, I'm from Texas. I took a sip. Texas? Well, hell. She slapped me on the back. I'd already figured out in those 2 days that Texas is one of the quote brand name states. Being from Texas is much cooler than being from a merely recognizable state like Connecticut or Florida, or a state like South Dakota. Texas gets you noticed. I'll have one of those, she said to the bartender, pointing to my Bahama Llama Ding Dong, which pointed back. Then she said her name was Morgan. Morgan drank hers. I drank mine. We both drank a few more. My recall of subsequent events gets steadily worse, but I do remember that she had a cat, a flat screen TV, black satin sheets, and a knack for saying what she thought. And that's pretty much all I remember, except for waking up the next morning, getting kicked out of an unfamiliar apartment because she had to go somewhere and was looking all embarrassed, and heading home with a hangover that made navigation difficult. By the time I got back to my dorm room, I had no idea where I'd started out. All I had to show for the event was a newfound confidence with women, slowly manifesting superpowers, and an appetite for rare meat. We've been over all that, I said to Dr. Prolix. I still can't help you. This is not about helping me, she said firmly. You won't come to terms with your disease until you find your progenitor. Well, I've tried. But like you've said before, she must have moved away or died or something. That had always been the big mystery. If Morgan was still around, we'd be seeing her handiwork everywhere. Peeps popping up all over the city, a bloodbath every time she picked up some foolish young Texan in a bar, or at least a few corpses every now and then. I mean, it's been over a year and we don't have a single clue. Didn't have a clue, she said, and rang a small, high-pitched bell on her desk. Somewhere out of sight, but within earshot, a minder tapped away at a computer keyboard. A moment later, the printer on my side of the red line began to hum, its cartridge jerking to life below the plastic cover. This was recently brought to my attention, Cal. Now that you've dealt with Sarah, I thought you might want to see it. I stood and went to the printer and lifted with trembling fingers the warm piece of paper that slid into its tray. It was a scanned handbill, like they pass out on streets sometime. Dick's Bar is back in business, 7 days a week. The health department couldn't keep us down. The one and only home of the Bahama Llama Ding Dong. Dr. Prolix watched me read it, steepling her fingers again. Feeling thirsty? She asked.